finally getting this thing out there, I want to talk a little bit about the 12-Day War, or what we're calling the 12-Day War. I think that the recent discourse on it was way too short-sighted. Basically, what seemed to happen right after the immediate hostilities had ended, people pretended that everything was over because what it did for them was it made Trump look good. Now, the recent apparent punt on the Epstein case by the Trump administration seems like an opening to maybe say these things and maybe be a little bit better understood, as opposed to having the barrier of, this was 4D chess put up. The main point that I'm trying to make here, and I'm not going to try to get into too much depth here, I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of food for thought and a few basic points. But the main idea that I really want to get across here is that assuming that the 12 days of the 12-Day War, and that calling it the 12-Day War is itself a bit of propaganda, assuming that those 12 days are the proper start and end points kind of ignores things that may have been put into motion by the actions of the U.S. military during the 12-Day War. And there are 4 points I think that we need to look out for in possibly the very long term, maybe even out to 10 years or more, of things that may happen as a result of the 12-Day War. Number one, most basic one. If Iran wants or wanted nukes, why would they work at sites where the IAEA inspects? Obviously, this is something that they wouldn't do. They were enriching up to 60% because that was per the treaty that they were in. And obviously, the IAEA is trying to keep things compartmentalized in Iran. Radiation measurements, keeping track of all the material, looking at where things are moving, keeping an eye on all possible transport. But in a country as large as Iran, and in a country with as much varied terrain as Iran, and a country that actually can mine and excavate its own uranium ore, were the IAEA agents there 100% effective? Maybe they were, but maybe they weren't. Now, it may be that up until the 12-Day War, Iran was not trying to put any, secret uranium anywhere. It might be that they were. I don't know, and I don't think that, I'm not sure that anybody actually knows other than the Iranians. But did the actions of the U.S. military during the 12-Day War convince them now that they need to start moving material to someplace where nobody knows about it? Has there already been some material stockpiled there? Do they have alternate centrifuges, something like that? Were the centrifuges even damaged with the attack that the U.S. military made on the things? We don't have any reliable information about that. We don't have anybody down there to say, yep, we saw things have been blown up and we saw the things have been broken down. The best that the U.S. military can get is the word of Iran, is saying, yeah, you blew it up, you sure did. And that might be true, or it might be not. Number two, Iran is often called, and with some, I think, with some truth to it, certainly, that it's a sponsor of terror attacks. If they are, well, why wouldn't they sponsor one eventually in the U.S. or the European Union or in Israel? They would need plausible deniability, and they would have to build it up slowly. But again, this is something that's not impossible to happen, especially in a relatively long time frame. If we look out to the distant future of 10 years, it could be that something gets built up with a decent amount of plausible deniability so that Iran can say, well, this wasn't us, even when it was. Has the U.S. government, by engaging in this 12-day war, has it caused Iran to create a new plan for some new thing to happen that might happen in 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 years? We don't know. Number 3, what stops the military-industrial complex from waiting for some unrelated terror attack that wasn't funded or promoted or planned by Iran, some unrelated terror attack, waiting for that, and then blaming Iran and resuming attacks? Is that a possibility? Of course, there would have to be, it would be the quicker that someone takes credit for the terror attack, the better. That is, the better for us, not the better for the military-industrial complex. But assuming that no one takes credit for some kind of attack that happens in the next year or two, right? It could be that the military-industrial complex propagandizes people and says, oh yeah, this was totally Iran, even though it wasn't, and then uses that as an excuse for further aggression. What effects could that have on foreign policy, on negotiation, as a result of something like this happening? And again, it's something that would require some care to be done, but it's certainly something that could be done hypothetically. Number 4, Has this psyop, if that's actually what it was, I'm not convinced of that. I kind of actually am more along the lines of thinking that someone said to Trump, yeah, this is happening. And he's like, but we're still negotiating. And then they're like, yeah, this is happening. He's like, well, crap. I gotta spin this so that I don't look like an idiot. I think that's probably the more likely situation. Of course, far from 100% certain of that. But has this so-called psyop damaged the U.S.'s credibility? Has it made it so that it will be harder for the U.S. government to negotiate with other adversaries like Russia and China in various areas? Has it made similar operations to the 12-Day War usable against the U.S.? It would be the opposite of ironic if at the end of negotiations, right before something was signed between Ukraine and Russia, that Russia launched a massive attack on Kiev and said, well, we're just going by the rules that you've created. It would be the opposite of ironic for that to happen. These are kind of the four things that just off the top of my head, I wanted to talk about as why we're looking at the 12-Day War with too myopic a lens, right? These things could have effects in 6 months or a year or 2 or 5 or 10, maybe even more. We could have set things into motion that we will not like, and, that could have been avoided if negotiations had been allowed to proceed. There's one more point that I want to make that isn't about an event necessarily, but it is about something that could happen, that could be used as an argument later on, right? We had this argument used against us, that Iran is full of suicidal crazies, and if you give them, if they have whatever, they'll use it immediately without any regard for their own personal safety. The 12-Day War proves, categorically, that this is not true. The Iranian government and Iranian military acted relatively, with a strong, with a strong perspective or with a strong affinity towards their own personal safeties, and they even went to the trouble of providing advance warning to a U.S. military base before they launched missiles at it to ensure that no human life was lost. It is very likely that the next time that Netanyahu or, what's his name, any of the crazy war hawks in Congress or whatever, that the next time one of them talk about Iran, they're going to bring up this crazy Iran argument again as a point as to why we need to attack them right now kind of thing. And the actions of Iran during the 12-Day War have thoroughly debunked the crazy Iran argument in the future, and it should not never, ever let it pass again as something that has any weight whatsoever, because we know that it does not at this point. So, in summary, I want to remind people that the effects of this so-called 12-Day War might be a year out, or 2 years, or 5, or 10, and that when people are doing things, when the military goes off and attacks some people, that we need to look at the long term, not fall prey to cute names like 12-Day War, and not assume that everybody else sees the same start and end points for those actions as we would like to, right? It'd be great if there was just no bad blood between these countries now that this whole thing is settled and everything is all happy and everybody's all hunky-dory. But the odds of that are not 100% for sure. And while some of the things that I said are, difficult to get across, right? Like the IAEA has good radiation measurements. Maybe they've kept everything where they know, but, maybe they're 99% effective, but is that enough, kind of thing? So yeah, that's what I wanted to get across with this. It's my own fault for letting this thing go so long that that this kind of became a little bit stale. But again, we got to look at the long term, and these long term effects could be more than a year out for all we know. So yeah, myopia with Iran, and it is a bad idea to let the government media complex tell you that something was a 12-day war, when what you may have done is you may have pissed someone off to the point where a year from now they're going to do something horrible. That would also be part of the 12-day war, and but it's more than 365 days after the end, according to our government sources. Anyway, that's what I got for today. Have a good rest of your week. And yeah, if you want to support the channel or anything like that, you know what to do. And I will see you next time, probably with some more Rousseau. So yeah, see you next time.